Welcome to the Pindown, your Detroit Pistons podcast. I'm your host, Wes Davenport from Motor City Hoops and Detroit Bad Boys.
And I'm Blake Silverman, writer for Detroit Bad Boys, covering everything Pistons, and news writer for Sports Illustrated.
And we are recording here on a Saturday afternoon before the Pistons play the Bulls. I was going to say old friend Jaden Ivey and the Chicago Bulls, but it looks like he's either questionable or out this upcoming evening. So a little bit of a bummer there. I do know he was getting the DNP right beforehand, so maybe that's related. Regardless, we've got bigger, better, more fun things to talk about here on this episode of the Pindown, because the last bits of NBA basketball we've seen were Cade Cunningham and Jalen Duren basically winning the All-Star Game tournament, right? We watched that, and so I'm sure we can have some reactions on that, and we should start there. But also the beatdown of the now full strength, more or less, New York Knicks. Miles McBride's out the rest of the year. They didn't have any other injuries, and the Pistons, hey, shout out to the Knicks. They kept it under 20. 15-point win there for Detroit. So what are we up to at now? Plus 81 in the regular season against New York. We'll get into that. Blake, what'd you think of the All-Star Game? We got a lot of good stuff to chat about.
Oh, man, All-Star Game. I mean, just to start on a high note, I thought the actual format was really fun. But it may have been fun because 3 of the 4 mini games, 12-minute games, had really good endings. We saw game winners. We saw overtimes. The final was a little bit of the bummer. Cade Cunningham and Jalen Duren's team of the young guns really took it to the LeBron James, Kevin Durant veteran.
Those
team.
Guys wanted to go home. It kind of looked like it seemed like they knocked out the world, and everyone they're just like, yeah, we've done our job.
Yeah, they ran out of gas, but I thought it was a good format overall. I do wonder a bit if it was a little bit heightened by just the close games of it, but it seemed like everyone was competitive. Cade definitely competed. Ant Edwards competed. Wemby was a beast right out of the gate, and like Ant said, really set the tone. So I thought it was fun. I think we might see the format again, maybe with some tweaks or whatever have you. All-Star Saturday, on another note, was not as fun, especially the dunk contest. The 3-point contest was cool just because we got to see Damian Lillard. He comes out and wins it again, and Steph has already said he wants to go out next year and try to tie Dame, who has 3 3-point contest wins now, and Steph just has 2. So hopefully next year we see Steph and Clay, and someone finds a way to fix the dunk contest, but I don't really know what you do at this point. I think that might be a bit of a lost cause.
I just want to say with the 3-point full disclosure, I did not watch All-Star Saturday night. I didn't watch All-Star Friday
Eastern.
Yeah, like it I would have missed it anyway, even if I did want to watch it. I had no idea it was starting that early. So I would have been one of the people that missed it, even if I had intended to watch, but I didn't. I kind of purposely didn't care. So I just stepped away from it. But I thought I was losing my mind when Damian Lillard won. Like, I see that on Twitter. Damian Lillard wins the 3-point shootout. I'm like, I thought he was out for the year. Like, what is he doing in this game? What is he doing out there at the 3-point shootout? And I was texting Bryce about it, and he's telling me, no, you're not crazy. He is out. He just, we kind of did it on one leg, which I guess makes it impressive. But at the same time, like, dude, what are you doing out there? You're not healthy enough to play.
Yeah. I mean, I thought it was cool just that he came out, and it was something that, I mean, I don't know if we saw it before, like back in the day, back before we were watching, but it's not something I've seen before. So I was excited that he decided to go and do. I mean, he's not on the team that we pay close attention to. So maybe if I was a Blazers fan, I would think a little bit differently. So I thought that was cool overall. And I guess if you're gonna come out when you're missing an entire season, the way to do it is when all you have to do is just stand there and shoot unguarded threes. So credit to Damian Lillard for going out and winning that. I mean, he's 3-point contest wins. Like Steph's out there, he's the greatest 3-point shooter of all time, but Dame obviously deserves some credit too for his dominance in the 3-point contest.
All right, last thing I want to say on All-Star Weekend before we get to the, as Mimsy313 says, absolute shellacking of the New York Knicks in Madison Square Garden. With the All-Star Game format, like I think it's fine. I kind of miss the East versus West, but I will fully admit that that's a nostalgia thing. So I could guarantee you if the NBA sticks with this little round-robin tournament format thing for the next 5 to 10 years, there's going to be a group of kids like I was that loved the All-Star Game when I was younger, watched it every year, and then just kind of get nostalgic over this particular format. So if they just stick with it, that'll happen and it'll be great. But can I ask them to throw us a little bit of a bone? Like, can we just do East versus West and then make them 2 teams, right? Each, you could have like the top vote getter is the captain, right? And then the second vote getter is the other cap. You could even have it like you could bring back the picking teams things. I don't really care how they split it up, but like have 2 West teams, 2 East teams. So I still get some of that nostalgia hit for fun. And then the kids can enjoy the tournament and we can all have a little bit of more competitive basketball. That's all I'm asking. That's all.
Yeah. Unfortunately, there's not a clean way to just split it up East versus West because there's 3 divisions in each conference. And I don't think you're going to want to have 3 teams per conference. But yeah, I think you could split it up East versus West and definitely do a draft of sorts. I know they already did the draft thing before, but I think if you do it in this format, it shouldn't change much other than where the teams land.
All right, so let's talk about that Knicks game because, well, I feel like we've now recorded right after the Pistons blow out the Knicks twice this season. Is this 2 out of 3 for us?
I believe so. All
right. So there you go. We got to make sure if the Pistons play the Knicks in the playoffs, we're going to have to make sure to drop the pod immediately after at least 2 of those games. But 126 to 111, it was fairly close in the first quarter. And then, it just kind of wasn't the rest of the way. The Pistons had pushed the lead up to 20 points there in the fourth quarter. You had a absolute masterclass from Cade Cunningham, 42 points. He went 5 of 11 from 3, 8 rebounds, 13 assists, 2 blocks, and a steal. I mean, is that the best game we've seen out of Cade Cunningham in his career?
I think it has to be at least one of them. Like, I want to say it's the best game he's had, but I worry about the recency bias factor of it getting into play. But I mean, it's definitely a dominant performance, and we're going to get into, I think I know we have one, we might have a few questions on the whole MVP discussion, but I think it was maybe not like a MVP. This is Cade's award to lose now, but it was obviously there's Shea and Jokic there. And I think Cade is right after those guys, and Jokic has the whole eligibility thing. He might even be not eligible to win the award, but I think this performance from Cade is an MVP type performance where he should at the very least be in the discussion because 42 points, 13 assists, 8 rebounds against the Knicks. The Pistons win 2 games in a row without their starting center and then one of the best, if not the best, rim protectors in the league. Obviously, the Pistons don't win this game without Cade Cunningham, and his performance was just on another level. It was just unstoppable. I love how he just plays well at Madison Square Garden, which is crazy. I think I saw he had the first 40-10 game by a visitor at MSG for like almost 20 years. I think it was since 09.
Since LeBron James in 2009. Yep.
Yeah.
And then before that, it was Allen Iverson. So
not bad company. Not bad company. And like we've talked about the free throws at length this year, but he put up those numbers only getting to the line 3 times, was 3 for 3 from the line. So it was just an incredible performance. One that was recognized on a national level. And for all of us that watch every team of this game, it was just one of the best games that we've seen so far from Cade Cunningham, which is crazy because he's been incredible all year.
And I think that this is one of those games where, like, you're right. Like, it gets you kind of solidly into that MVP conversation, because early on in that game, the Pistons off the tip were struggling to put the ball in the hoop. I think they went down 7-2, and I get that it's super early, right? But it felt like the Knicks were kind of coming out and little bit of a message, not crazy. They weren't boat racing the Pistons or anything at all. I don't mean to say that, but it looked like the Pistons might have a little bit of a tough time putting the ball in the basket. And then Cade hits a 3, and then Cade hits a few more shots. And then he's getting Paul Reed involved for a couple of dunks. Like, this is one of those games where, like, Cade took 34 shots, and they needed him to take every last one of those 34 shots again. The Pistons needed a guy to kind of drag the team to a victory. And Cade not only did that, but he created basically 18 points for Paul Reed on a 7-9 night. Paul Reed also had 3 blocks, by the way. Tobias Harris went 4 of 16, but was a plus 17 in the game. Like, this was the Cade Cunningham show, and the Knicks had nothing for him. Josh Hart can't stay in front of him. He's too strong for Mikal Bridges. OG Anunoby now has some issues with Cade. That was a trend last year in the playoffs, right? OG actually did a great job. None of these games. Cade's had the keys there for that matchup now all season. Like, this was just, it was unbelievable. I'm at a loss for words.
Still, like, defensively, I mean, the Knicks aren't the greatest. They're never going to be a top tier defensive team in the league when their team is built around Karl Anthony Towns and Jalen Brunson. But speaking defensively from a Pistons perspective, Jalen Brunson had a pretty good game, 33 points and 8 assists, 6 rebounds. In the last time these two teams played, Asar Thompson had Jalen Brunson in jail pretty much. He did not have a good game. So it was really cool to see that Jalen Brunson still scored more than 30 points, and the Pistons were able to win this game fairly handily after that rough start. They just took control of the game and really never looked back, again, without your all-star center and without Isaiah Stewart. So it was an incredible performance. It was a signature win. I felt like it was a really important win. It's just coming out of the all-star break when a bunch of teams make different moves and you just have to lock in for the rest of the season. No one made a more significant move than the Cavs, and they've looked really good since James Harden has arrived there, and even before that. But the Pistons, as we know, didn't rock the boat really at all. You bring in Kevin Huerter, you send out Jaden Ivey, the core remains intact. You're even playing at a disadvantage without Duren and Stewart, and you're still finding a way to win games. I think this is the time of the year that we see teams in the playoff picture, like what's happening to the Charlotte Hornets right now, who are exciting and gonna make a push for the play-in and playoff discussion. They're hitting a little rough stretch. So I think it was really important for the Pistons to make that statement and start out strong coming out of the break. And they did that and then some. I would be a lot more scared if I was a Knicks fan, because the Cavs are already right on their heels, if not already.
They passed them.
They passed. Okay. Yeah. Because yep. Cleveland's won 7 in a row. So, and then the Pistons
by a half game, to be fair, but
yeah, a lot of time left. But yeah, the Pistons have a nice cushion in the top spot, and I think you just have to find a way to keep that afloat. And hey, if the first game tells us anything, it tells us that they're taking this seriously. There was no reason to think that they wouldn't, but it's nice to see it translate against such a good team like the Knicks.
And we got to give Cade one more shout out for the defense too, because Cade Cunningham, I think that's kind of an underrated storyline that came out of this. Cade Cunningham was the primary matchup for OG Anunoby on the other end. So OG's guarding Cade, And then Cade was guarding OG, which is pretty much the matchup that they had last year in the playoffs. Cade held OG Anunoby to 3 of 13 from the floor, 8 points in 32 minutes. OG Anunoby took 8 threes. OG Anunoby took 8 threes because Cade is now strong enough to hold his ground and not let him, just kind of shoulder in and push him back. Like it's a little thing. I get that because it's not like Cade was amazing defensively. I know he had 3 stocks, but he's a solid defender. He's not Asar Thompson. He's not the type of guy that's putting Jalen Brunson in a box, and that's not what you're going to ask him to do anyway. But the fact that you could put your superstar, your 42 points, 13 assists, 8 rebound guy on OG Anunoby, a big wing, and have him force a 1 for 8 outcome from 3. Well, we'll say force 8 threes out of the 13 shots because that's more translatable. That's huge. Like, we're going to talk about the MVP conversation here in a second, but we can't lose sight of that. I think Stan Van Gundy said it on the broadcast, of the guards who are great scorers in this league right now, Cade Cunningham is the best defender out of all of them. And I don't think that is remotely close. I think he's generally a neutral most nights, but some nights, like he was against the Knicks, legitimately good defender while also putting up 42 and 13 and 8.
Yeah, and I just think defense is so important, especially against teams like the Knicks, and you can loop the Cavs in too, because neither of those teams are trying to win games defensively. Both the Knicks and the Cavs have their defensive ratings are fine. They're in the top halves of the NBA, but they're not as good as the Pistons or the Celtics or teams like the Thunder or the Spurs. So when it comes time for the postseason and defense is heightened a little bit, I think the Knicks are certainly going to struggle, and that's their one glaring hole that the Pistons were able to expose a bit. I mean, Jalen Brunson still got his, but like you said, when you limit OG Anunoby, and Karl Anthony Towns had 20 points as well, but he didn't go crazy, and no one else on the Knicks roster really did much of anything. I mean, Landry Shamet had a nice game off the bench, but if you're able to limit the scoring for a team like the Knicks, then that's just a way to beat them, because their recipe to beat you is just keep up and just get out in front and really punch you in the mouth. And the Pistons didn't let them do that a little bit at the start, but it didn't get out of hand. And then the Pistons were able to control the game and just not look back from there.
All right, last guy I want to throw out and give some props to, and then obviously you can do that as well before we got to move on. But how about Asar Thompson making Jalen Brunson work a little bit on the other end of the floor? That was awesome to see, because I think that we've got a question about Asar Thompson as it comes to the playoffs and with his offense, his ball handling and things like that. But I think that what he did in this game against the Knicks is really what I want him to do when you get to the playoffs. In all likelihood, he's going to get matched up with a smaller guy guarding him who the other team is trying to hide. And if every now and again he can take Jalen Brunson into the post and make a little kick out for an easy assist, if he can kind of rip and drive and make something happen in kind of that, sort of quick hitter way, if he can do some stuff in transition after steals, just enough. We're not asking for a lot. It wasn't like he had an incredible offensive game. He was 4 for 8 from the field and scored 10 points. That is right on his season averages. But if he can do that consistently, it's just enough to make the Knicks feel that they are being forced to use Jalen Brunson defensively. It'll be just enough to make the Cavs feel like Donovan Mitchell's out there on the other end of the floor. You know what I mean? I think that's going to be incredibly big for this team once we get to the playoffs. And it was great to see on a night where I know Jalen Brunson scored 33 and had 8 assists, 6 rebounds. He went 12 of 20 from the floor, so he was efficient. That's Jalen Brunson, guys. He's a great player. He's going to do that. I thought Asar Thompson was playing really good defense on him, and he just made some really tough shots, and great players are going to do that to you. But Asar got 10 of them back and 3 steals. That's what you need. That's what you need out of him.
Right. And you're just going back to the team defense thing, like that's a big reason why the Knicks and the Cavs are just not toward the top of the NBA as defenders, because they have players that are so offensive minded, which I mean, it definitely helps. And that's how they're able to win games lots of times. But if the Pistons are able to take advantage of that and exploit those mismatches, that creates an immediate advantage in the playoffs. And I'm not saying the Pistons are perfect. I know that we have Duncan Robinson who starts for our team, and he's definitely someone you have to cover for defensively. But and yeah, on top of that, like we've mentioned, Paul Reed, Tobias Harris, Asar, I thought it wasn't the most high leverage minutes or like clutch minutes or anything, but Dennis Jenkins had a great fourth quarter. I think that all 8 of his points came in the fourth quarter, and right after signing his new deal, which is well deserved. We all thought that was coming as well. I mean, when Dennis was scoring was pretty much when the game was within that 15 to 20 range, so it wasn't crazy clutch minutes or anything like that, but it was big to make sure that the Knicks couldn't get out on a run and make things a little bit interesting at the end. So I thought he had a nice game off the bench too. And Javonte Green as well, like 9 points off the bench. He's just been who he is all season. He made a couple big shots in that Knicks game, gets the line 5 times as well. So I thought it was a good game. A good game all around, especially when you are shorthanded and you beat one of the top teams in the East in their place, which is what the Pistons should do as the best team in the East. And they took care of business, which they have all season. And we just have to come and expect it by now.
All right, this is too funny, so I have to throw it in there before we actually get to one of our pre-submitted questions. But I said Asar Thompson was like, that was his like average offensive output, and I don't think I realized exactly how much average that was offensively for him. He scored 10 points. He went 4 for 8. Asar Thompson this year averaging 10.2 points on 4.2 out of 8.2.
Mm-hmm.
So it's spot on. And just to make it worse, rebounds and assists on the season, he's averaging 6 rebounds, 3 assists. So 9 combined against the Knicks. What did he do? 5 rebounds, 4 assists, 9 combined. That was spot on. Way to go, Asar Thompson, for making the averages look really smart. That was perfect. All right, let's get to. All right, do you want to stick with the SAR, or do you want to go MVP conversation first?
I'm down to stick with the SAR. We're already on him, so we can continue.
All right, let's stick with that. Let's stick with that. So this is from Ramester in the DVB comments. Says that JB Bickerstaff has dialed back Asar's usage from earlier in the year. He's handling the ball a lot less and attacking the basket less. How big of a problem is that for the playoffs?
I mean, I don't think it's a huge problem, just because we know Asar isn't going to be one of your primary offensive guys in the playoffs. Like, he hasn't been all season. That's not just going to magically change for the playoffs. And I mean, he's really out there to blow up pick and rolls and on offense, try to take advantage of, like Wes was saying, the Jalen Brunsons and the Donovan Mitchells and the low tier defenders where he can. And hey, if he can get 10, 12, 14 points a night, that's huge for this team. When you have Cade Cunningham doing what he does, and when Jalen Duren is back in the lineup, Duncan Robinson he was 3 for 6 from 3 against the Knicks. So we'll have some more like productive nights out of him as well. But I just don't think Asar is going to be your primary or secondary or even tertiary scorer or playmaker. So I'm not really concerned about it. And I think a lot of that is JB just seeing that and making a quick adjustment based on the player that Asar Thompson is right now, which honestly, I think is really smart of him to do. So I'm not necessarily concerned about it.
Yeah, I'm not either. I actually think it's kind of weirdly a little bit encouraging that we've seen this sort of usage from Asar get rolled back from earlier in the year. Like I love Asar Thompson. I love what he's doing defensively, and I think that he's a better cutter than he gets credit for offensively. But that's kind of the end of the good, I guess you could say. Like he's an all right passer. Richard in our live chat just brought up a time where he posted up Jalen Brunson and then whipped a pass right over Brunson's head to Paul Reed. That was beautiful. Yeah, absolutely. It's just not consistent, right? We don't see that a lot. And he's much better a passer with his feet set than he is off the move. So off the dribble, or even if he's doing a cut and then kick out, it's just not really to his skill set right now. Like maybe that's something that can come in the future, but it's not really there right now. And where the Pistons are is they want to compete, right? They want to win the games right now. They want to win playoff games right now. So maybe this is something that Asar Thompson can develop over the offseason or into next year early on. But right now, I think, like Richard brings up here, maybe this is a Dennis Jenkins thing. If Cade's really getting a ton of pressure and you need someone out there to take the ball handling away, bring in Dennis Jenkins. And I think too, like if you really distill this down, this is kind of an out of the box idea, but we've seen the Pistons do this a few times already this season. I wonder if we're going to start to see it quite a bit in the playoffs. And that's it. The real issue with Cade getting backcourt pressure is it takes a while for the ball to cross half court. The Pistons don't get into their sets, and now you're a little bit more rushed offensively, right? Well, if the issue is just the pressure and the time it's taken to get across half court, have Jalen Duren bring the ball up and then get into a dribble handoff with Cade or anyone else. You could do it with Duncan Robinson. You could do it with Tobias Harris. Yes, you could do it with Asar Thompson too. Like if the issue is really just getting initiated, getting the floor set, Cade can do that as he's running down the floor, even if he doesn't have the ball. We've seen him do this. And we've seen them do this a lot as well with Jalen Duren kind of just dribble it up, get it to a guard after you cross half court, and we're rolling. So I wonder if that's something that they're going to turn to a little bit too. Like that's step one. If Cade's getting a ton of backcourt pressure, kick it over to JD, let him bring the ball up, see if we can get into some actions from that. And if that's not working, all right, let's go ahead. Let's get Dennis Jenkins in. Let's ask Tobias Harris to bring the ball up a couple of times. Like they have options where I don't think, frankly, any of the options are perfect. It's not like they have a true secondary initiator. But I would trust all of those more than Asar Thompson right now, I guess is what I'm trying to say.
Right.
Yeah. And sorry, real quick to Ryan's point here. I don't see or like Duren taking it up the court unless he's wide open. I think he will be wide open. That's why I'm suggesting it. Cause I agree. If he's getting backcourt pressure too, like get it out.
Yeah.
Get it out quick.
Yeah.
Unless it's like Jokic, right? Or some slow foot, not the rap on Jokic, but like slow footed big that's out in front of him. Like, okay, fine. But if you start pulling a wing up, like if OG is going to put backcourt pressure in a series against the Knicks with Jalen Duren, it's like, yeah, don't do that. Don't do that. Just give it somewhere else.
Yeah, and I think it's just it's a team context thing at this point. Like if the Pistons are the Pistons of 2 years ago and the March and April upcoming are still about just getting more run and trying new things with your young players, then I think we see Asar with the ball in his hands a little bit more, but things have changed drastically over the past 2 seasons. And I think JB is just using Asar in the way that he can be most impactful right now. We've definitely talked about at length, like how it looks rough at times when Asar has the ball on his hands and is dribbling with pressure in the open court or whatever. So I think we're just adjusting to cover that. And I hope he improves eventually. I think he can and will, but I think right now it's just not there. And like Wes said, there are other options on this team that if Cade is getting doubled full court or whatever, like you have plenty of options who can bring the ball up. Like I know Richard brought up Ron Holland in the chat as well. Like he's been able to bring the ball up too, and not saying Asar can't, but we've seen some rough looking things happen when he puts the ball on the floor. And right now is just like not the time to get those reps in. It's a time to maximize what you're good at right now.
Yeah. All right. So this is kind of a fun question here. This is from KCP for 3, and it's through in our DBB comments, but a couple of fun things we can take out of this one. We could use this to talk about Cade Cunningham MVP stuff. We can use this to talk about just the state of the MVP debate, because it's kind of awesome that this question's even being phrased this way. And then also we can talk about Luka Doncic too. But he says, should it annoy me an insane amount that Luka Doncic is in the MVP conversation, as if it were even a debate between him and Cade Cunningham? Better team, better defense, comparable offense. What are we even talking about? Again, KCP for 3, and it's from the DBB comments.
So I don't know if this is me personally, and like shameless plug, I did like an MVP race review on Sports Illustrated that everyone can check out, but I have Cade right after Jokic and Shea right now. I think just when you take into account what Cade is doing, how he averages the most assists in the league other than Nikola Jokic, and again, Jokic might not even be eligible for postseason awards, I give Cade the edge over Luka. That said, I think Luka should be an MVP conversation. I don't think Luka really has a realistic shot of winning it just because of basically the team that the Lakers are. I think when you have a Shea out there, you have a Jokic who's averaging a triple-double, and you have a Cade Cunningham who's putting up the numbers he is, leading this massive turnaround in Detroit. I think those are all better cases, but just to be devil's advocate, Luka's leading the league in scoring. He's averaging 33 points a game, more than Shea Gilgeous-Alexander, and that's super impressive. And last year, only Giannis and Shea, I believe, averaged 30 points or more. So I think Luka definitely should be in the conversation, but I don't think he should be in front of Cade. I think those two were pretty close before this Knicks game happened, honestly, but I think that was a huge statement for Detroit. And not to credit myself, but I had Cade in front of Luka before that Knicks game even happened. And just to talk about Cade's case specifically, I do think that like Jokic and Shea are in another tier, just because I think Cade needs to score a little more. Honestly, he's been great for Detroit. I don't want to discredit anything, but he's averaging just under 26 points a game. Shea's averaging just under 32. Jokic 28.5. Not super far off from Cade, but Jokic is also averaging well above a triple-double. So I think Cade has a great case just because of how he's leading this team. And I think if the Knicks game is any indicator, like maybe he'll be able to bump up his scoring a bit over the last stretch. And we've talked about his 3-point shooting. He had a great game from 3 against the Knicks, going 5 for 11, but he's just 33.5% from 3 on the year. If you look at the top 10, Cade's the 12th highest scorer in the NBA right now. He has like the lowest 3-point percentage of all of those players. So I think that's an easy way to bump it up. Not saying it can happen overnight, but I think that's where Cade's case is being held back a little bit nationally right now. But I think what he did against the Knicks like certainly put him almost in a tier above Luka in the MVP conversation.
Yeah, I'm not my top 4 order right now wouldn't be any different than yours. I think that Shea and Cade to me would be in the same kind of tier together. I mean, as great as Shea's been this year and even more so in the past, I don't know. I think it's just a little bit closer than people would generally think. But the thing with Luka, and I'm just going to throw this out there because it's insane. And I'm a big Luka Doncic fan, so it's fun to talk about. And we don't get to on a Pistons podcast a lot, so I'm just going to do it anyway. But you mentioned he's leading the league in points per game, 33 points per game, 7.8 rebounds, 8.6 assists. Mm-hmm. He's slashing 47, 35, and 78, so fairly efficient, right? But when you dig into the just volume here, it is insane. He's averaging almost 11 free throws per game. He's taking more than 10 threes per game. He gets, the bad defender reputation, and he is a bad defender, but you know what else he does? Gets steals. He's disruptive. Mm-hmm. He's actually averaging 2 stocks per game. Luka Doncic, the guy that everyone says is a terrible defender, 2 stocks per game because he's averaging 1.5 steals. He has a +5 net rating on a Lakers team that's a literal net neutral. 0 net rating as a team, 8.3 in box score plus minus, by the way. And he's 3rd in assists per game. And then on top of this, we know that this isn't all empty calories. We know it's not just volume because he did drag that Mavericks team all the way to the NBA finals, right? He did. So we know that this is valuable. And he has been in MVP contention every season since his rookie year, except for last year. And last year was injuries and the trade that happened. So you kind of set that aside there. He wouldn't have really qualified for it. That being said, I do still have him behind Cade Cunningham in the MVP running right now. I think it's probably going to come down to Cade and Shea. And if I were a voter, which I obviously am not, I would give it to the guy whose team has a better record at that time. That's just kind of how I'd do it.
And just so if I had a vote and Jokic was eligible, I think I would vote for Jokic right now just because he's incredible.
Yes. Jokic is the most valuable and best player in the NBA right now.
Yeah,
and maybe that's a hot take. I don't think it is.
Yeah, and he can only miss one more game or the rest of the way to remain eligible. So that's where everything gets a little bit messy. And Cade and Shea are right next to each other in terms of games played. I think they'll both be eligible. I think where Shea sticks out is he could have a 50, 40, 90 season. He has a little bit of work to do. He's shooting 39% from 3 and just above 89% from the line, but there hasn't been a MVP who put together a 50, 40, 90 season since Steph Curry. So I think I thought a little bit about Shea won last year. Cade has this massive turnaround around with Detroit. Is that a good enough narrative to give him a boost over Shea? I think that type of season from Shea is a little bit of his calling card and then averaging 6 points more a game. But I think that, I like that too. I think it can end up being closer than we think, especially if Cade even turns it up a notch the rest of the way. It would be a tough time to be a voter, and Jokic being removed from the conversation definitely makes it a much more difficult choice.
You remember when the Pistons had the number 1 pick, they were gearing up to take Cade Cunningham. There was conversation, should they take Jalen Green? Should they take Evan Mobley? All that good stuff. But there was also a section of the discussion that was focused on, should the Pistons trade that number 1 overall pick for Shai Gilgeous-Alexander? Do you recall this? It's kind of funny to think back on now.
Yeah, was it Shea and Josh Giddey, or was that a separate?
I don't remember. I think this was, so I think it was James Edwards III who started it. Shout out James, doing a great job with the Knicks beat right now. I think he might have started, or it came up in one of the athletic kind of mock draft things. And it's just funny though now to look at it, and you're talking about number 2 in the MVP running versus number 3 in the MVP running. Both teams are really happy with how that non-deal turned out, and they would have been really happy with how the deal turned out too. There really wouldn't have been too much of a difference in the long haul. It's just kind of interesting. They're different stylistically,
the best teams
and all
in
that,
their respective conferences too.
Yeah. How about that, right? Sometimes things just work out. That's kind of nice. All right, this one's kind of fun. This is from Pistons Fan 11. Says, I love that JB says he studied the bad boys and the best 5 alive. to Best Five Live teams to pattern us after. But is that odd? Do most teams do that as opposed to adapt a style to what they have, like the Lakers not being Showtime Lakers anymore, etc.?
So I don't think it's a bad thing, because I think it's just a good thing to keep it, because obviously that narrative is going to happen from the fans' perspective. So it's nice to know that the head coach of the team is also sort of at least thinking about that as well. I thought, I'm going to do another shameless plug, but Chris Mannix at SI's, one of SI's NBA guys, interviewed Tom Gores. So everyone should check that out if you haven't. But he actually asked Gores about the bad boys and the going to work team narratives. And what Gores said was, like, it's something that he's thought about, but it's not necessarily something that was forced. It was something that happened organically by the type of players that were brought in, like the Isaiah Stewart's, I feel like is the best example of it. And the rest of the way, like Ron Holland, Cade, and Jalen Duren to a degree. But the NBA has changed, and I think Cade and Jalen Duren are the biggest examples of that, of how the Pistons can sort of mimic the ilk of their championship teams and really just harping on defense and being these enforcers, a team that no one wants to play, but then also sort of adjusting to the modern NBA with the type of players that they are. So I think it's a good thing that JB is studying it, but I'm not looking too deep into it, honestly.
Yeah, to me, like I think it's odd would be the wrong word because it's a negative connotation. I think it's unique. And I'm not sure that it's necessarily repeatable. Like, look, there are many ways to win in the NBA, right? That's always going to be true. That's part of why it's such a great strategy puzzle. It's part of what makes basketball so fun. But the Pistons are a historic franchise, and B, it just so happened that when they won their back-to-back titles, it was with a very kind of counterculture like vibe. All right. So that's the bad boys. They're tough, right? All the usual stuff. And then that going to work crew kind of saw that and emulated it in a way because they were more the outcasts, and it just kind of resonated with them. So I think that it happened. It's something that happened two separate times in Pistons history. Like Gore said, like you said, Gore said, kind of organically. I don't know if it was necessarily more intentional than Joe Dumars is running the show and just wanted a tough team. And then that team really kind of bought into it. But what's interesting is now that that's happened for three separate teams, two separate times, the Pistons kind of have a identity that's up in the rafters, where if you're a player, I mean, how could you not try to emulate that? If you're a coach, how could you not try to emulate that? And if you're a fan, like, you don't have to be that old to have seen the back end of that going to work team. And you know all the history because, you know, your friends, your parents, your uncles, whoever, their grandparents, they're all telling you about it too. So there's just kind of this like distinctive style with the Pistons that is a little bit unique. So Pistons fan brings up the Lakers, the Showtime Lakers. Aren't they a little flashy still? They were a little flashy with Kobe. They were flashy when LeBron came back with AD and they win that championship too. Now they got Luka, Austin Reeves. LeBron's still kicking around there. Like, they're still in that kind of mythos now. Look at the Nuggets, right? The Nuggets, even though they didn't win a championship, it was, you know, the high altitude, high octane, fast pace. And what do they do when they win with Jokic? Like, yeah, they do it a different way. But that's what gets them there. They're playing fast out on the fast break, and they're just running teams to death. Like, I think that there's something that just kind of comes with having this more historic franchise that, yes, at one point organically developed this mythos, but now it's there. And if the Pistons were winning right now with, you know, that Showtime Lakers style, I don't know if they'd be embraced in the same way as they are right now. They still would be, but it wouldn't be to the same level. So yeah, like I think it's unique, and there are probably only a handful of other teams that can really do something like this. And I'm sure that that'll grow as time goes on, but for now, the Pistons are kind of a select few, and it's pretty cool.
Yeah, and I think no matter who, like to a degree, this happens for teams other than the Lakers too. Like, and more, even more recently, which I think is a tougher discussion. Like I'm thinking for the Cavs, like Donovan Mitchell and all those guys get asked about the LeBron and Kyrie's championship year and LeBron's year in Cleveland, especially if they're thinking about LeBron having a return. But I mean, Donovan Mitchell say they want to bring a title to Cleveland just like LeBron did, and it's a different style of play, but they're asked about it. Even the Thunder, they didn't win a title with Kevin Durant and James Harden, Russell Westbrook, but as their team was growing, they were asked about those teams and how this new young iteration of the Thunder, where the roster is totally turned over, has pulled stuff from that iteration. I think I like the Pistons identity more than any of the others that we've talked about, because other than the Lakers, I think it fits the city the most, and it's something that people can really get behind. And when players are drafted to Detroit, like you said, it's something that they can see and they can at least have in the back of their minds. Like, I don't think they're going out and saying, let's be like the bad boys or the going to work Pistons, but it is an identity that can be a through line through all these explosions of this team into the forefront of the NBA, which I think is a positive as well. But I just don't think that it's something that you have to really like harp on day in and day out.
All right, so let's get some playoff conversation, because you know what? We're only, I think, 28 games away. And like you said, the Pistons have a commanding lead. So, you'll forgive us for looking ahead just a little bit. Michael Dompierre, might be hard to answer now, but do you think Ron Holland will play more than 12 minutes per game in a playoff series?
Ooh, so let's see. He is at 20 minutes per game this season. So, I mean, I think he'll play more than 12 minutes a game. I think as rotations get tighter and stuff, like he probably won't be at the regular season levels, but I think you can expect somewhere between 15 to 20, because I mean, you saw him get minutes in the playoffs last season. I know the team was without Isaiah Stewart, without Jaden Ivey. So that probably gave him some more minutes, but I still think he's a big part of this team. And we've talked about the depth that this team has, which impacts Ron to a degree, but I don't think it impacts him enough where he's necessarily going to be out of the rotation. And just the type of player he is fits playoff basketball. He's growing offensively, but right now what he can do is cause some chaos as a defender and hopefully help you out a bit on the offensive end too. And I think that's something that helps this team in the playoffs. And JB Bickerstaff is certainly not just going to want to cut out of his rotation drastically. So as things go on, I think you'll see his minutes go down a bit in the playoffs, but you'll see that for the entire bench, other than Isaiah Stewart, I'm guessing. But I don't think it will be drastic for Ron Holland. I guess right now it would be somewhere around 15 minutes a game.
I'll go on. I'll take a hot take route. I'll say he stays at 20.
Okay.
I don't see Asar Thompson playing significantly more minutes in the playoffs. I think Asar Thompson is a little bit of a hired gun. You're put him out there defensively to really hound the other team's best perimeter player. And that takes a lot of effort and energy to do. So you definitely want to keep him fresh. And that, not like Richard brings up here that Ron Holland's gotten much better at defense. I think that is accurate. And he's no Asar Thompson defensively, obviously. But between Javonte Green off the bench, a little bit of Dennis Jenkins, he's a solid on-ball defender in my book. Like, I think the Pistons have enough to spell Asar Thompson and not lose too much, which gives you a lot of upside. So I think Ron Holland is just kind of firmly established in the rotation. And if it's someone's minutes being cut, it's probably like a Javonte Green more so than a Ron Holland. I think you kind of have a defensive luxury here with sitting down Asar Thompson and sending in Ron Holland. That's just kind of mean.
Yeah. Yeah, no, that makes sense too. And I mean, hey, if you need a spark off the bench, Ron Holland definitely gives that to you.
Yeah, you want to change the tone of a game, sub in Ron Holland and Isaiah Stewart. That'll flip it on a dime.
Especially, and we talked about Asar earlier on in the show, but if he's not taking advantage of said bad defender on whoever the Pistons opponent is, then yeah, throw in Ron Holland and see what he can do. Maybe he can provide a quick spark off the bench. I mean, that's not going to happen every night, but we've seen certainly that he is capable of it. No one on this team other than like Tobias Harris and Duncan Robinson and Karis LeVert to a degree has massive playoff experience. So they're all in the same boat, but Ron has some playoff experience as a rookie, which is certainly going to help him his next time around. So yeah, I still think he'll be a big part of the rotation in the playoffs.
All right, so we got the same question from two people. First, let's go with Dream Scraper 00 says, who scares you in the playoffs? And then from Pistons Fan 11 in the live chat, do the Cavs worry you for the playoffs because Asar Thompson can't guard both Harden and Mitchell at the same time unless maybe he has a twin somewhere? I wonder if he's got a twin somewhere. Who scares you in the playoffs, and is it the Cavs?
Yeah, I'd say the Cavs are one of my answers, and I don't want to look past the Knicks either, just because the Pistons are coming off a big win of that. I think the Knicks have some sort of motivation to beat the Pistons again in the playoffs now, especially. But my first answer, honestly, would have been Boston, and they are. There's a lot up in the air with them. We don't know if Jason Tatum's going to come back. It's sort of looking like he's not, but even without Tatum, they're still at second in the East. The Cavs are only a game behind them. So who knows what the standings will be. I just think Jaylen Brown's in the middle of a career year, and then behind him, Peyton Pritchard and Derek White have been solid. They're definitely not as deep as the Pistons, but I think they're a good team. And Nikola Vucevic isn't the player he once was, but he's killed the Pistons at times. And Boston doesn't have Anthony Simons a little anymore, so that makes some offensive questions, especially if Tatum doesn't come back. And if he does, who knows what he's going to look like. I would guess he's not going to be 100% of the Jason Tatum that he was. So they would be my first answer, but right next to them would be Cleveland, just because of how awesome that they've looked this far with James Harden and Donovan Mitchell, and Evan Mobley just returned from injury after the All-Star break, and they haven't lost. What's interesting about Cleveland is we haven't really seen such a drastic trade deadline trade result in a title. So I don't know if they're necessarily going to get over the hump this year. Maybe they need some more time. I'm just anticipating some bumps in the road coming along, which is hard to say because we haven't seen them yet, but there's still a lot of time to go. There's playoff basketball, and the trade deadline, I was trying to go back, and I think the biggest deadline trade that helped a team win a title was Rashid for the Pistons back 20 years ago. But James Harden is a totally different player. He adjusts that offense so drastically, and it's looked great so far. So I'm scared of them as well. But I think if the Pistons take a little bit of the same approach that they have against the Knicks in the regular season, because Cleveland, yeah, they have Evan Mobley, yeah, they have Jared Allen, but their team is built around Donovan Mitchell and James Harden now. So they're going to have to beat you offensively, and Asar Thompson can only guard one of those guys, like Pistons fan 11 said. But the Pistons have been such a strong defensive team. I think they can figure it out, which is all the up in the airness with Cleveland is why I'm just a tad more scared of Boston than them. But I think Boston and Cleveland are the right answers.
Yeah, Boston's my answer. With the Cavs, like I've really liked this Cavs team the past couple of years. I have different thoughts about James Harden than, well, maybe there are some people that don't enjoy watching James Harden. I'm also one of those people. I'll just put it that way. But I recognize he's a great player, surefire Hall of Famer. So absolutely, like they're a really talented team. I do still think the Knicks are a higher caliber team than the Cavs. I'm not necessarily expecting the Cavs to maintain that lead. The Knicks, it's such a weird case, man, because they are incredibly talented. They should be better than they are. I love these blowout wins. If I'm being completely honest, and not a big Homer Pistons fan, it doesn't make a lot of sense to me how the Pistons have got an 81-point margin across 3 games against the Knicks in the regular season. Like they are better than that. I would have, I'd say that the Pistons are a better performing team. So like maybe the series should have gone 2-1 or something and been close games, but that's not what we've seen. Regardless, it seems like it's a brain trust thing with the Knicks, and I don't know exactly how to fix that, but they are really good. I know that the hot answer right now is the Milwaukee Bucks, but and yes, they've won 3 in a row, 6 out of their last 10, but they are still a game in the loss column behind the Hawks and the Hornets. The Hornets are really hot, 7-3 over the last 10, so just one better than the Bucks. And I know Giannis is out, but I don't know. The Bucks they've got to get in there and then not be a disappointment when they're in the play-in. And the play-in's not going to be easy, not at all. Like the Magic are really talented. They are better than their record. That's another one of those teams. And the Heat, Eric Spoelstra always has those guys ready to go. So I get the idea with the Bucks, but I got to see it first. If they're in and they're the 8th seed, I'll be worried. But we got to get to that. I don't think it's a shoo-in by any stretch. Any final thoughts there before we progress on?
That would be a scary first round series, but I think the Pistons are a better team than that. It's just the Giannis of it, happens with that. So we'll see. A lot to go there. But yeah, I don't want to say that I'm necessarily scared of the number 11 team in the East right now before they do some improving of their own, which they've been good of recent without Giannis. So we'll see what happens.
Yeah, that's where I'm at as well. All right, so another playoff one here. I don't know what this trend is in the DBB comments, but it's cracking me up. So this is a haiku, as long as I'm understanding this correctly, by Big Ben RYU. Says, if the Pistons can reach the NBA Finals, silence Thunder how?
I haven't caught wind of this trend, so I'll have to do some investigating myself. But I mean, I think for any team with the Thunder, it's why we've seen the Spurs have the success over them. I think the way you beat them is just by having some sort of advantage in the front court. Obviously, San Antonio has a 7'5" alien that no one else has, so that's a totally different conversation. But Shea is gonna be Shea when he plays whoever. Asar Thompson will guard him, and I think he can do as good a job as anyone can. But I think they're in a potential NBA Finals between the Pistons and the Thunder. I think there would be a lot on the shoulders of Jalen Duren and Isaiah Stewart, and even Tobias Harris to a degree. Just with the Thunder, it's always how their number 2 and number 3 players are going to be. Like Jalen Williams had a great postseason last year. Chet's had his first All-Star season this year. So I just think if you're able to limit both the offense and offense specifically with Chet, and then just the defense of Harden and Chet, then you can find a way to potentially beat the Thunder. It's such a tall task. I don't think any team other than maybe the Spurs has the perfect answer, but since the Pistons have the best rim protector in the NBA and Isaiah Stewart, we'll see a couple games between these two teams and we'll be able to figure this out a lot more. But I like that matchup specifically. I think the Pistons could protect the paint well a bit. And hopefully SGA doesn't get Asar into foul trouble or Cade into foul trouble or whoever it might be. But I think you really just, it's all about protecting the paint and just the front court matchup, because you know that two of the best guards in the NBA are gonna be who they are in that series, and it's about the rest of the team around them.
Yeah, the Thunder are tough. I do not have an answer to this haiku, unfortunately, because look, I know that the Thunder are 6-4 in their last 10. They've looked human. I get that. On the season, they still have a plus 11.7 net rating. And guys, net rating, if you do not know, is not just points scored on the season minus points allowed on the season. Net rating is per 100 possessions, how many points does the offense of the Oklahoma City Thunder score? That is 119.2, by the way. And then per 100 possessions, how many points do they allow? 107.5. They have, by 3.7, exceeded the Pistons net rating on the season. They are incredibly good at this whole basketball thing. And yes, Shai Gilgeous-Alexander's been unreal, almost 32 points per game. But you mentioned the other guys, right? Well, J-Dub's at 17.5 points per game. He's slashing 48, 31, so not great from three, and 83, very good from the free throw line. Chet Holmgren, 17.4 points per game. They got two guys averaging over 17 points per game. AJ Mitchell's actually doing pretty good off the bench for them too, almost 14 points per game there. They added Jared McCain. Isaiah Hartenstein's a good physical matchup there for Jalen Duren in the post. Like, Lou Dort is one of the only guards that, man, I am nervous for what he can do against Cade. Cade's either got a size or quickness advantage on almost everyone that's guarding him. He's got one or the other. That's what makes him so hard to guard. Lou Dort is big, strong, and can move. That one's going to be really tough. So I don't have a good answer. I think the Thunder are incredible. They deserve to be front runners at this point, and it'd be a big time upset if the Pistons could get into the finals and pull that off. And obviously you got to have hope, right? But the Thunder are really good. That's all I'm saying. They are really good.
Yeah, and you brought him up, but shout out to Jared McCain. Like, he had 21 points last night, and I mean, I've long been a fan of his when his one season at Duke and the pre-draft process. I'm happy you got that change of scenery. I think it's the perfect situation for him, and that's a scary ad, because if he's playing next to Shai, that's a guy who can beat you from the perimeter and just one more player that you have to keep track of. So that was, even though the Thunder didn't have a crazy deadline like the Pistons, that was an awesome acquisition, which I kind of wish the Pistons made, honestly.
Yeah, and then just to make the comparison more tangible, so Cade Cunningham, 25.7 points per game this season. You compare that to SGA, 31.8. But then Jalen Duren, he is averaging more points than either Holmgren or J-Dub, so he's at 17.7 points per game. But then it's Tobias Harris at 13.4. Then it's Duncan Robinson at 12.2. Sar Thompson, 10.2. It's the Thunder just have a lot of good scoring depth. They're good, talented, deep team. And like you said, they just added another one there in McCain. Let's do a quick hitter here, and then we can kind of wrap this on up. First, from Donnie G0303 in the DBB comments: if the Pistons can get to the Eastern Conference Finals or the NBA Championship, do you consider or reconsider re-signing Tobias Harris? If not, who would you replace him with? So what are you hoping the Pistons do with Tobias Harris this summer? And is that outcome dependent for you?
I don't think it is. Like I was gonna say, no matter what happens, we've talked about this before. I hope the Pistons bring back Tobias Harris on a much more affordable deal, ideally for the Pistons, the veteran minimum, as he's 33 years old. If not that, maybe a little bit more. I just think he's been such a huge fit, not only for what he does on the floor, but in the locker room and really being a veteran presence for these young guys. That's not a secret. We all know that. If it's not Tobias Harris, I'm looking through the free agents right now who are in a similar position. I mean, there's Dean Wade from Cleveland. But just looking through this list, I don't see someone who necessarily gives the Pistons what Tobias Harris does. And I think that's because it's so specific to the position that Tobias Harris has been in with this team and over the past 2 years, and having the experience he did in his first stint with Detroit. So like just looking through the free agent class, there's a lot of players who are the same age, if not older than Tobias Harris. And I mean, if you can get Tobias Harris back on an affordable deal, I definitely say you do it, because I mean, I don't know if the team wants to sign John Collins for $25 million a year as a Tobias Harris replacement when you have Cade's extension already kicking in. Jalen Duren's going to get paid. Isaiah Stewart needs a raise, and what's going to happen with Asar Thompson and Ron Holland. So I hope Tobias Harris comes back and just grows into that veteran leader for this team, that as his playtime goes down, as he gets older, he's still able to contribute as a leader on this team. I think he will. But yeah, obviously it's a business deal at that point.
I'm in the same boat as you. I think I'd love to bring him back on somewhere around like what Karis LeVert is getting this season. I think that'd be a good fit. And then, hopefully you can transition him to a bench role. Maybe that's Ron Holland taking a step in the starting lineup. Maybe that's getting Isaiah Stewart out there full time. Maybe that's not on the roster right now. I don't know how that's all going to shake out, and we don't have to think about it for a few months, but I think you got to keep Tobias around. He's so valuable to the locker room. JB Bickerstaff has mentioned him as a coach on the floor, I think he called him the safety blanket, something like that. These guys love Tobias Harris, and Tobias Harris, probably more importantly for this conversation, he loves it in Detroit. So if you can find a reasonable amount to keep him around on, I think I'd rather just do that than move on from him in any sort of way. Last one here, another kind of free agency-ish question. This is Camille. Says, do you think we could find a player through the draft, free agency, or a trade who would fit next to Cade, create opportunities for him, and turn double teams into advantage? And then if that's possible, who could it possibly be?
So are we thinking in terms of like a scoring guard / a scoring wing, something like that? You think?
Maybe, yeah. I mean, I guess it doesn't have to necessarily be a guard or a wing. Could be, I don't know, like recently I've been very intrigued by, say, like a Naz Reid archetype kind of player.
Yeah.
That'd be a lot of fun. And I know they tried to get him last offseason, is what it is. But, I guess it could be kind of carte blanche, whoever you want, any position that you want. Doesn't necessarily have to be a scorer, but he's just saying find a player who can play off of him. So kind of interpretation.
I mean, I think in the draft, like maybe you can find some shooting. Who knows if Chaz Lanier will break into the rotation next year. Free agents, again, like looking through the class, I don't know if the Pistons are necessarily going to make a big free agent signing this offseason. I think the most likely path is a trade, but we don't know who will be available. So, I mean, Norm Powell's a free agent. I think he can definitely create advantages, but he just had his first all-star season. He's not going to be cheap. He's 33, about to be 33 years old. So I don't know if that necessarily fits. And then you can look at players like Anthony Simons, Kobe White, players like that. I mean, I think there's definitely some adjustments that will happen in the offseason. I think the most likely path is via trade. I mean, maybe looking at a team like the Pelicans or something. We've talked a ton about Herb Jones and Trey Murphy. I think those players will be fairly expensive, and who knows if the Pistons will get them. But I think that idea is more likely than maybe getting Naz Reid out of Minnesota. I think Minnesota will want to keep him now, depending on how they do. And just so much happens in the offseason. You never know who's going to come available. So I think there's definitely a player out there. I'm just like not fully confident who and even like what the player archetype is yet.
Yeah, and I think that, just practically it kind of gets difficult with free agency. It's like, let's say that you're going to use some of that mid-level exception to bring back Tobias Harris. Well, then you don't have that to use on someone else. It's going to get really difficult to bring, and it's already going to be difficult to bring players into cap space here. I don't know how active the Pistons are really going to be in free agency. If you're thinking of trade, maybe, but who are you giving up? If Pistons fans really want to get rid of Karis LeVert, then why do you think other teams would want him? We start getting into those conversations. I think that the easiest path is just the draft. Try to draft well, see if you could get a shooter, ideally a two-way player. Otherwise, again, I'm just going to keep saying that the easiest answer to this question is Jalen Duren keeps getting better at this kind of second scoring role. He already plays off Cade really well. And if you can have that be that true second star type of player, well, then now you're just looking for kind of marginal pieces the rest of the roster. Can you upgrade Duncan Robinson defensively? Can you find a 4 who can space the floor and not give up anything defensively? You're just kind of looking for those small things, and that suddenly becomes really manageable, in my opinion. But, in terms of they need to go get a guy, right? They got to go get a dude who can elevate the team. Well, one, they're already first in the Eastern Conference and they're looking really good, and we have to see what it says in the playoffs. But right now, I don't know how much more they need to be elevated, at least in the short term. Holland's development too. Dompier's right. Michael Dompier's right. That's a good one to pull up. Holland could take a big step there. That's just, the easiest answer is internal. And frankly, that's probably where the Pistons are headed right now with the cap situation they have anyway.
Yeah, 100%. Because when the Duren deal happens, things are going to get tighter. Same with Isaiah.
Like you said,
Stewart.
You got to extend Stu. Yeah. And
Asar
with
too,
him
probably.
Being so this is going to get messy.
Yeah. And if it is a trade, and it's a significant trade, Ron Holland or Asar Thompson might have to be on the table. Not saying the Pistons are looking to part with either of those players, but if I'm an opposing team, I'm certainly interested at the very least. I'm going to ask, because Cade's certainly untouchable. Jalen Duren is probably getting there if he's not there already. I mean, I don't think the Pistons would trade him unless they wanted to bring in a player like Giannis or something. And the Bucks were just we're not doing this deal unless Jalen Duren is included. But that makes the trade conversation a little bit tricky, especially in the offseason when you don't have Tobias Harris's $26 million expiring contract as well. And Duncan Robinson has been such a big part of this team too.
You know what the best part of this year is, Blake? We're in the end of February. And we're getting to talk about now? I mean, outside of the last two questions here, we're getting to talk about this season, what the Pistons are doing this season, that they just curb stomped the Knicks again, that they're sitting first in the Eastern Conference. And hey, how are they going to match up against OKC if they get to the finals? These are the conversations we get to have. And I still sometimes think back to being in Europe, logging on to do a Pindown episode with you on like game 18 of the 28 game losing streak, thinking like, man, we should have just taken this one off. It's like 1 a.m. here. What am I doing?
Yeah.
And now this is where we're at. Like, this is just so great.
Yeah, we could have been like those Carolina Panthers podcast guys who just said the team is so bad, we're not doing this anymore. And then their team started to win.
Well, and look, I'm glad that we didn't. I'm glad that we didn't. We stuck it out. I mean, we're up to 116 episodes now, and we earned this. Dang it, we earned this success. Because you and I worked so hard for the Pistons to be good. It's nice. It's just nice to be having the basketball conversations instead of trying to spend an hour once a week prognosticating about the future, because that's all that there is to look forward to. Go Pistons. This has been awesome. Great year.
Yeah, especially when March and April. Yeah, March and April can sort of be the doldrums of the season for a lot of teams, and it's not that way for the Pistons this year. So we're excited about what's to come, and then talk about some playoff basketball when it really counts. But shout out to everyone for joining us today. Reminder, you can call our phone line to ask a question and hear your voice on the show. The number for that is 313-355-2717. And special thanks to Sean Corp, the managing editor of Detroit Bad Boys, for supporting the show. And shout out to you guys for all the great questions and talking points tonight. We'll catch you next week, whether on your commute or live with us on YouTube. We can't wait to talk more Detroit basketball with you all.